Hello there. Today we're going to be going over the basics of making syrups at home for your coffee drinks. A couple days ago on Instagram, I asked you all what my next newsletter topic should be, which, by the way, you can sign up for that in the description. However, a majority of you said syrup basics, and once I got started writing it, I realized that inevitably I had a lot more to say than could fit in a single newsletter, hence this video. Some of you may remember a couple years ago I did a syrup video. Since then, my methods have streamlined a little bit, and also we're going to be going over some different methods for making syrup than we did the last time. So with that being said, let's get started. I'm excited for today. First things first, let's review the basic tools we'll need. We're making syrups. Inevitably, we will need some sugar. There are two primary types of sugar I like to use in the syrups I make. However, you can explore all different types of sugar, various levels of refinement, various levels of molasses content. You can do all sorts of different things. However, for the most part, I tend to use turbinado sugar or a more refined cane sugar. The way I decide which one I'm going to use, it depends on what flavor I want to infuse into the sugar. If I am making a spiced syrup, something using vanilla, baking spices, I tend to use a darker, a little bit more molasses heavy turbinado sugar. If I'm using lighter ingredients such as florals, lavender, rose, the like, I'll use something that's a little bit more clean in flavor, like a more refined cane sugar. You will need some sort of clean bottle or receptacle for your finished syrup. I tend to like using small bottles. I tend to do my syrups in pretty small batches. You can use deli containers. You can use whatever have you. You'll want to make sure they're clean though. You will need a small sieve or a strainer. And lastly, and the most important thing here, is you will need some type of kitchen or gram scale. Today, we're going to be talking a lot about ratios. That is really the recipe we're going to be using for all of our syrups. And having a scale so you can measure things by weight is going to be very important. So let's get on to our first syrup.
I want to give a huge thank you to Craftsy for sponsoring today's video. Something you may not know is that every drink recipe I create starts as a sketch. It may not be a very good sketch, but one of my goals for this year is to feel more confident while drawing, and that's where Craftsy comes in. Craftsy is your online resource for all things creative, from sewing to drawing to cooking to paper crafts. You can find instructional videos taught by a wide range of friendly experts who will walk you through demonstrations, techniques, along with providing insider tips and tricks. For me, both the mixed medium and colored pencil courses have given me a much greater understanding of the tools I've been using, much more so than what I've been able to glean on my own. One of the other great things about Craftsy is that you're joining a community of fellow makers and DIYers. You'll have access to Craftsy's live streaming tutorials and a place to share your ideas and stay inspired. So, if you're ready to join, I have a special offer for you. The first 1,000 of you to click the link in the description will get a full year of premium membership to Craftsy for only $1.49. This offer is valid for new members only and can be found at the top link in the description or by scanning the QR code on screen.
Okay, the first syrup we are going to do today is probably going to be the most simple and also the most common. This is simply going to be an infused sugar syrup. The ingredients we need some sugar, we need water, and then we need whatever sort of flavor enhancers you want to infuse into that syrup. Some of the really common ones are going to be things like dried spices, so something like cloves, cardamom, pepper, cinnamon, juniper, anything like that. Additionally, something that's really easy to do is florals. So let's say you like rose or lavender. All delicious things, and really the sky is the limit here. Now, as to how I like to think about my syrups, I really like to do a rich syrup when I'm doing an infused syrup. We talked about ratios a little bit earlier, but there are two primary ratios that exist within sugar syrups. You have what's called a simple syrup. It's a 1-to-1 ratio, 1 part water to 1 part sugar. Or you have what I usually prefer, which is a rich syrup. That's going to be 2 parts sugar to 1 part water, plus whatever amount of added things you want to do. I also like to keep the amount of infused ingredients I'm adding pretty simple. What I have found is kind of my standard is whatever amount of sugar that I'm using, I will use 2.5% by weight of my additional ingredient. So, for example, the recipe we're going to be doing today is utilizing 200 grams of sugar. So, do the math, 2.5%, we're going to be using 5 grams of our additional ingredients. Let's make it. Now I have all sorts of examples over here, and I think we're gonna go with a clove syrup, actually. Get yourself a saucepan, put it on your gram scale. Oh gosh, I need scissors. Okay, anyways, scissors aside, I mentioned earlier that we're gonna be using 200 grams of sugar here. So let's weigh that out. As I mentioned before, we're doing a spiced syrup, so I'm going with our little bit more molasses heavy, a little bit darker turbinado sugar. We'll tare the scale, and now we're gonna add 100 mils of water. The really nice thing is milliliters of water and grams of water is equivalent, so you can just use your scale and add 100 grams. It doesn't look like a lot, but trust me, this is all gonna come together very nicely. And then with this, I'm just gonna chuck my cloves in already. This is really a toss it all in the bin and then let it heat and let it infuse. Now I've got my saucepan on a burner, and I'm gonna bring it up to about medium heat here. One of the important things with syrups, especially when you are using more delicate ingredients like florals, like vanilla, any of these kind of softer flavors that can be really damaged and broken down by heat, the important thing is to make sure your syrup doesn't get above a simmer. We're going low and slow here. All we want to do is make sure all of that sugar is melted, and then we're going to remove it from the heat and allow it to cool and finish infusing. Okay. I'm going to stand here and watch my syrup as that sugar melts, and I'll see you in about 4 to 5 minutes.
2 hours later.
Okay, you can see this start to steam a little bit. My sugar is fully melted. That syrup has come together, so we're gonna take this off the heat. Now, specifically, I'm going to leave those cloves or whatever other infused ingredient in there while this cools. That's gonna allow that flavor to continue to infuse. And then once it's all cool, we can strain out the larger solids, and then we'll have our syrup. So while that happens, let's move on to our next type of syrup. Okay, so our infused sugar syrups. Those work great for dry ingredients, spices, florals, tea, any of those things. However, they don't always work great with fruit, or specifically citrus. Citrus is a really, really delicious flavor to add to coffee. It matches up with it super well, especially flavors like orange or lemon or lime. It's all delicious. However, oftentimes when we think about adding syrups to coffee, we're usually thinking about lattes, in which case we have dairy involved, which adding citric acid to milk doesn't always go so well. And that's where this next syrup comes into play. We're gonna be making an Oleo saccharum. I get excited because this is like my favorite type of syrup. Okay, Oleo saccharum. Simply enough, it is Latin for oil and sugar. This is going to be a 2-ingredient syrup that simply uses citrus oil and sugar. It's used very, very commonly in cocktails. However, I love using it in coffee drinks, specifically cold foams. I really, really love making citrus cold foams, something that really tastes like a creamsicle. However, if you're adding just citrus juice, be it lemon or orange, you get curdles and nasty stuff. This is a quick way around it. Simply enough, we are again going to be talking about ratios and using a 1-to-1 ratio by weight. You can do this with really any citrus. However, today we're going to be using orange, and this works super well because oranges tend to have a ton of oil locked away in those peels. All we're going to do to start out with is peel our orange. This is an especially fun thing to do if you are someone that really likes orange juice. If you find yourself using a ton of oranges, you might as well make an Oleo saccharum. You can juice them just the same and then keep the peels for your Oleo saccharum. As you can see, I'm peeling them, so I'm not getting a ton of pith. It's mostly just the peel here. If you get a little bit of pith of that white kind of bitter part, don't worry about it too much. You're using so much sugar in this, you aren't going to be able to really tell. In fact, I would be very impressed if you were able to tell. As you can see, these are nice oily peels here. And if you squeeze them, you can actually see, I don't know if we'll pick it up on camera, but if you squeeze them, you can actually both see and smell all that orange oil. Once more, we'll get our kitchen scale. I like to make Oleo saccharums in like little deli containers. I get these with to-go food all the time. I clean them and keep them. They work great for small ingredients like this. So let's weigh our peels. I saved us some time and I already peeled my oranges. No need to watch me do that. let's put an even 100 in here. For Oleo saccharums, I tend to just use a small granule cane sugar. 100 in peels, 100 in sugar. Okay, now before we allow that extraction process to begin, I like to just mix everything up, make sure all the orange peels are evenly coated so that the sugar can start to draw out all that delicious oil. Seal it up, give it a good shake for good measure, and then all we have to do is wait. Typically, an Oleo saccharum will take between 6 to 8 hours to form, and with these, I'll just do them at room temperature. So I'll make this the night before, I'll set it on the counter, and then when I wake up the next morning, something wonderful has happened. Dun dun dun. Suddenly, you have something that has a whole lot of liquid in it. Now, you may notice with your Oleo saccharum that you still see some drier sugar on the bottom that hasn't fully dissolved. You might even see some on the peels, and we don't want to waste that. So before I strain all of this out, I like to do one thing. This is just warm water. I like to add usually just about 15 grams in there, just to kind of rinse everything. This will loosen up the Oleo saccharum very, very slightly as a syrup, and additionally, it'll just make sure we've kind of washed off all the delicious stuff that we want to use. Okay, once that's done, all we have to do is bottle it. Additionally, what you have left in here is basically just like a sugared orange peel. You can use these as garnishes, or if you want to be really fancy and have a lot of fun with it, you can also dehydrate these, and they're super tasty. I like Oleo saccharums because they are kind of as like low waste as you can get with syrups. Now, the syrup we just made, an Oleo saccharum, is specifically oil and sugar. However, what if you used something else that didn't necessarily have oils? You can still do that, and it makes a very, very fantastic fruit syrup. Some of you might know the type of syrup we're about to make as chong. It's a Korean word and a type of syrup making that involves using fruit and sugar. Oftentimes these are very fermented syrups that take a long time to make. However, you can do a sort of slightly abbreviated version. It's extra delicious. And my two favorite ingredients to use are, weirdly enough, banana peel and also strawberries. This strawberry syrup is probably one of my most favorite. There's just nothing wrong with it. Everything about it is perfect. Thinking in terms of ratios, once more, we're still going to be using 1 part of our fruit to 1 part sugar. Here I have diced strawberries. You can really do this with any berry, really any fruit that holds on to a lot of moisture. So all I've done is clean them and then slice them up, increasing that surface area as much as possible. You might ask, why not just do a strawberry syrup on the stovetop? Great question. With specific fruits, specifically really bright and fresh flavors like strawberries or blueberries or blackberries, once you start cooking them down, really stewing them, it really tends to change the flavor. You lose a lot of that freshness and you end up with something that just tastes like kind of jammy. This method keeps everything nice and cool. It also allows for that really, really vibrant berry flavor to come forward. This is my preferred method with most fruits. Okay, 200 grams of strawberries, 200 grams of sugar. Seal it up. When making these types of fruit syrups, in contrast to an Oleo saccharum, I like to put these in the fridge. They take a similar amount of time, usually 6 to 8 hours at most for the syrup to fully form. So easy to do this the night before, wake up, strain it out. So let's pretend it's been 8 hours, and through the power of movie magic, just ignore that it's in a much larger container. We now have our fully formed syrup, and our strawberries are looking quite a bit soupier in here. All we have to do is strain it out. I will say this makes for the absolute best strawberry lattes, but almost even better strawberry matchas as well. This syrup and matcha is just a match made in heaven. And now, similarly to before, you have your syrup, but you also have your spent strawberries, except they're not really spent because all you've done is macerate them in sugar. And so now you have something that you can put on ice cream, pancakes, eat with a spoon. You've made yourself a really lovely strawberry dessert as well. All right, now for our last official syrup that I'll show you. In the style of this sort of macerated fruit syrup, we are gonna be making a banana syrup. I love the flavor of banana. I think it tastes really, really fun with coffee, especially like creamy, kind of tropical cold foams and the such. However, working with banana, like the primary fruit of a banana, is tricky, it's stringy, it's clumpy. The flavor doesn't like to extract the way you want to. However, you can use banana peels. This may seem weird. However, this syrup is so fragrant. It basically turns into concentrated banana in a way I've never been able to achieve while using the fruit of a banana. We are using ratios here, and we're gonna be using a 1-to-1 ratio. I've just got banana peels here, and typically I like to use banana peels that have started to turn brown, where they're just like really, really soft and mushy and that sugar is fully developed. You don't need to be precise about this. I'll trim off the ends on either side. Again, you know, if you're making a syrup, just make sure your fruit is clean. Give all your things a rinse. And then I'm just kind of roughly chopping everything. Again, just really looking to increase that surface area, make it a little bit easier for our sugar to coat everything. I love these sort of things that kind of taste like magic, but really are just tossing things together and letting them do their natural thing. All right, banana peel in. You know the drill by now, equal parts. You can make as little of this or as much of this as you want. Shake. You can do the banana peels in the fridge. You can do them on the counter. 6 to 8 hours, same as everything else. Let's do some movie magic. Dun da da. Now, I was initially shocked at the amount of liquid that my banana peels gave up the very first time I made this. This makes a good amount of syrup. There's a lot going on here. It smells so good. Simply strain it out and you get this almost like a pink toned syrup. It's kind of this orangey color that you might not necessarily expect out of banana. I'm so sorry, I do have to taste this. It's very good. I have made really specific drink recipes with all of these different types of syrups if you are looking for some inspiration on how to use them. So I'll link those all in the description. And I almost forgot, we do have to strain our clove syrup that we started earlier. And there you have it. 3 different ways to make syrups at home for your coffee drinks. Ways that are pretty easy to do, use up extra ingredients, and oftentimes are more affordable than buying them. I'll include written recipes and ratios to all of these if you didn't catch them down in the description, as well as drinks that can kind of inspire you to get started with using these types of syrups. As far as storage for these syrups go, I like to make them in amounts that I'll use within about 2 weeks, and then I'll keep them stored in clean containers in the fridge. Oftentimes, syrups that have high amounts of sugar in them, like our 2-to-1 syrup here, will last far longer than 2 weeks, but 2 weeks is where I really start checking on them and making sure that they're not getting funky or anything. No bacteria or growth is starting in them. But with that being said, go forth and make all the syrups you want to. My name is Morgan. I wish I had made a drink to walk off with, but frankly, I have this banana syrup, I have a spoon. I think I'm gonna go enjoy a little bit more of it. So I'll see you all next time. I hope you have a good day. Bye everyone.